Okay, this is a bike many of you haven't seen before or not in some time. There's definitely videos on it on the channel. It's a Cleveland welding company frame that I bought on eBay as a cruiser with a Shelby Springer front end on it. And I built it to a BMX cruiser at one time, and then eventually built it into this. And this incarnation of it, it was built for the Pearl Pass ride that I was going to do in 2018. And I'm going to tell you all about it. This is not the fork I had on it. It was stolen. It had a quadra fork on it, which was the first gen elastomer RockShox fork, but this is a secondary one because it still had a 1-inch headset. When I got it back after being stolen, that fork was spent. And this handlebar here is a one bike only as far as I know, which was the Nishiki Pacific. They had them in a single gear or a 5-speed, and we call this a high-rise bull moose bar. And it's got the good old-fashioned Sun Tour shifters, the heavy-duty mountain bike levers that were actually like motorcycle levers. There's actually like a spacer piece that has to go on the end of that to make it work. The old-school Schwinn grips from the first-generation Sierra. The pedals everybody wants. Yeah, these are the X2 Pros, I think they call them. We've got the Tourney XT crank set. This is a Schwinn, as you can see, front derailleur, which I had to work. I had to file things down to work on all 3 gears. This is your vintage Sun Tour, all aluminum. It's the one everybody wants for mountain biking. This was found in the dirt in my buddy's backyard, and I refurbished it. Vintage wheels, Araya 7Xs. It's covered in dust, this bike. It's been hanging in my kitchen. Old school brakes, Specialized. The seat is really cool. And let me put this up on the tripod and talk to you about it. Let me first show you, right now you're going to see some snapshots of what this bike was when I bought it. And I encourage you to look at the picture folder on Facebook, which I'll leave a link for, and I'll mention it again in this video. Okay, so as I was saying, I got into this Klunker thing, I don't know, a little over 10 years ago. Now, we were building bikes as kids. When I was a kid, we all customized our bikes and built them for purpose, whatever purpose we wanted to use. And when I was young, at least where I lived, I'd never seen a mountain bike. I didn't see my first mountain bike until 1986 out here when I was in the Marines. I was a security force Marine down at Seal Beach. And I remember seeing a mountain bike and thinking, holy cow, man, you can ride that thing anywhere. So that's what I did when I got out. I bought a bike. And I commuted on bikes. I rode bikes everywhere. They used to call me Mike on a bike where I'm from. I'd always have a Schwinn cruiser, surfing with the surfboard, cruising the boards, all the stuff. Getting to and from work. I was a carpenter, used to throw my tools across my chest and ride to work every day. Bicycle's always been, ever since I was a kid. Started on a Schwinn and fell out of it. Got into motorcycles, got into cars, hot rods, all of it. And then some time ago, and it was, gee whiz, it was in the 2000s, 2007, 2008 in particular is when I started using this garage shop space. And that's a whole other story. And instead of driving here, I thought, why don't I just ride a bicycle? And I thought I'll just build a bike, from an old cruiser. And I stumbled upon the Clunker term. I hadn't really heard it before. And there was a group on Facebook called, what was it called? It was called Clunkers and Other Such Nonsense. I think that's the group. And so I got in there and I met a bunch of guys and I became friends with Chad. If you guys don't know Chad, Tick Warner, who has a YouTube channel now, and I highly recommend you go there. He's going to get better at it. And he was the guy. He was making bicycle parts and repairing frames and all that. Don't ask him to do it. He's not going to do it anymore. So I was buying stuff and I started building clunkers, and I really got into the history of it. I was building tribute clunkers. That's kind of the thing I'm doing. There's a whole bunch of them in here, and they're all cool. So this frame, when I bought it on eBay. No, I didn't. I bought it on Craigslist. So there's pictures I just showed you of what it looked like when I first got it. And then I turned it into a BMX cruiser, kind of, all that. And then the idea of the Pearl Pass was coming up. So Pearl Pass, you guys can look into that. I'm not going to give you the whole history on that. But it's a ride in Colorado that goes over to Aspen, and it's an annual event, and it's great history. And that's what I built this bike for. A couple other points about this bike is this saddle. So those of you who remember the that Klunker page I mentioned, you might remember Lars. Everybody loved Lars, and Lars was in Switzerland, and he was a cantankerous guy that liked to drink, man, and just dump on American politics. So he and I would have these headbutts from time to time, and but I loved Lars. He would annoy me. So we did a trade. He sent me this saddle, and I sent him a pair of Torca forks. He got the better end of that deal because those Torca forks were perfect. This saddle was not. It was basically in parts, and I had to rig a whole system to make this saddle work. The seat post was made by Del Coffer. He's still out there on the groups, and it's 4130 chromoly, and he brazed the 7/8 sleeve over the end to work with modern seat post guts. So I built this bike, and I used those parts, and I bought an Astro van, the cargo van. Drove it across the country to do a project in New Jersey, and I was setting it up to go to Colorado to do the Pearl Pass. This was 2018. I built this in 2017 into 2018, this configuration that you see here for the most part. And you've already seen pictures. I'll add one at the front of this video, and I'll add a couple at the back end. And I had it in the van, and the van had all my gear in it. And within a week or so, didn't have all my gear, but a lot of it. I was gearing it up, and I was setting it up, and I was driving around with it around town to see how it was going to work out for me for the drive to Colorado, knowing I was going to sleep in the van at the same time and all of that. And I met a guy that rides with a group of other guys along the coast here. They call it the Strand, and these guys are on Cook Brothers bikes and that sort of thing, you know, BMX cruisers for the most part. And I started riding with those guys. But the first ride I ever went on with them, I had to meet them at the Long Beach Marina. And we had a great day. We go out all day, have a great time. We get back to the parking lot, my van is gone. My van was stolen. And this bike was in the van. And it was a real bummer because I had my tool tote with hand tools that I had going all the way back to the 1980s. A hand plane in particular that belonged to my friend's father, who was a carpenter, who taught me a lot of stuff. And he lived right behind my dad's bakery. Sentimental tools were in there. My Japanese fishtail chisels for doing my mortises and everything. And this bike was in there. And that was a bummer, man. And I also had one of my handguns in that van, which made me nervous that somebody might get their hands on that. So these guys don't know me. And all of a sudden my van got stolen. It was crazy. One of them gave me a ride home. He was a cool dude. And that was it, man. So I kept riding with those guys. Eventually I got a new van. And a week after I got the new Astro van, which you guys see here, Astro Van Tribe. It's a lifted 4x4 Astro van. They found my old van. And it was at a place down, I don't remember where it was, but I had to go down there, and it had already been totaled by the insurance company. I wasn't going to get the van back, but apparently a lot of my stuff was still in there. The tools were gone. All my camping gear and everything was still in there. The bike was gone. The bike was gone. And, but my handgun was in there. I had a system, a hidden system. So my 1911 was still in the back of the van. Thank God. And one of my jacks and a lot of cool shit was still in the van. So that was good. And because this bike was so unique, you've seen the pictures already, from time to time I would post the pictures of the bike. I don't know what it was, but in my brain I thought, this bike is so unique, so custom, that anybody else who finds this bike, I have a hard time believing that they'd want to tear it down. Even the guys that stole it. I just couldn't believe that somebody would let that happen. So I kept hope alive. And for years, every once in a while, that picture of that bike would come up in my own feed, and I would share it. And then one day, I get a phone call from Matt, this guy Matt Howes, who I just spoke to on the phone. He works with Johnny True Torch, and they reproduce 4130 parts for your BMX cruisers, man. If you want a set of like chromoly BMX forks, tube forks, just like the Cook brothers, he reproduces those. You can get a pair, and they're under $200 in the raw, so you can still get these parts. At any rate, he calls me up. I'm not sure if he called me first, but the bottom line is there was a guy that I had ridden with after this bike got stolen, but I didn't know him well. Anthony Piera, really nice guy. Well, Matt sees my post, calls Anthony, and he goes, "Hey man, I think you got Mike's bike in your garage." So he looks at the pictures and he calls me, he goes, "Dude, I got your bike." Anthony had bought this bike on OfferUp for $80 like weeks after it was stolen. And they spray bombed it black. That's why it looks a little darker. I took a lot of that off. I left some of the red underneath as a patina. And there's a picture of me and Anthony together that you'll see at the end of this after I'm done blabbering. I got to get to work. So, but I just thought you guys would appreciate it. When Chad did this, the deal was I had to make templates for the gussets. So I made templates of cardboard for here, here, and down here, and he was able to trace those out in steel and braze them into place. The only like mistake or something I would do differently is he put bosses on this lower bar here that go to the rear derailleur. That's why that pad is here, because if you take this in and out of a house or something, that's where you grab it to lift, or if you're going to portage over a river or something. And it dug into the palm of my hand, so I keep thinking about going to Chad and us moving these to up here. The other thing is, instead of these sorts of bosses where the cable housing stops and you just have the bare cable, I wouldn't do that. I would do the round ones and just keep the cable housing, because then you can have the cables follow the contours of the curves of the frame. If you got a straight bar triangle frame, it's not necessary. But here with this curve, what I did was I took one of these spring clip guide holders and put a little piece of tubing here to pull that cable up so it wasn't hanging down here. I did the same thing on this down tube, otherwise that cable would have done straight here. So I pulled the cable down right here. Other than that, though, it's a great bike. It's odd. You guys can see the kind of the geometry here. The seat is here. The pedals are out here. So you're pedaling with your knees out in front of you, kind of. So it's a different sort of workout. I can feel it more on the top part, front of my quad, above the knee. And so it's just a different workout. Like, I would still like to take this bike on the Pearl Pass ride, but I would have to work out on this for a while beforehand. Otherwise, I'm just going to tear myself up. It is very comfortable, don't get me wrong. Somebody made a comment the other day, yesterday, right, or the day before. I rode the orange 1950 Schwinn to the shop. I'm riding different bikes. This is the point. This guy's like, just buy one of those new SE bikes, you know, but I think they're made in China for one thing. I'm not going to own that. I have a stable of bikes. I do not need to buy another bike. I don't need to build another bike. It's insane what I own already. This has been hanging since I got it back. I rode it once or twice, and then it's been hanging in my kitchen. That's why it's full of dust. So thanks Matt, thanks Anthony, and everybody else who helped out, and little memory of Lars here, which is a nice thing. It is a great bike. I'll use it more. All vintage parts build. That was the thing about the bikes. You know, Chad was always amazed at the money I could get for the builds I was doing. But the reason why people were willing to give me the money for the bikes I build is that they understand what's going on. I'm focused on art. I'm thinking about the aesthetics of it, but at the same time, I understand the parts and what I'm doing. I'm not using any garbage. Everything I'm using was the best of the best at that time. Of course, there's better stuff now, but when you get the new stuff now, you can see that it's new stuff. My builds, if a time machine worked, you could take one of my bikes and transport yourself back to a different time period, and that bike would fit right in. Nobody would look at it and go, wait a second, what's that thing? That's what's that futuristic thing that doesn't belong in this time period? That's not the case. I was building kind of like period correct tribute clunkers. And it was funny on that page because I would like Charlie Kelly or Gary Fisher. Gary Fisher had commented on the builds I made. He liked what I was doing. But Charlie was funny because you could buy a modern mountain bike today that's better. But yeah, not as comfortable, dude. Not as comfortable. Charlie and those guys came from like racing on road bikes, and that's why mountain bikes have that aggressive posture where you're leaning so far forward, all your weight's on your arms. It's not comfortable. With this, you got more of an upright position. It's more fun to ride. You might not win a race like that, but let me show you a picture right here real quick. So that was us, a group of guys on top of a mountain, the Verdugo Mountains. I was riding with these guys, and these guys were no joke, man. That was, I believe it was over 3 miles to the top, and you could ride a little bit of it. I could, but some of those guys could ride the whole way up, and I don't know how they did it. I couldn't do it. Many of us had to get off the bikes and push them. Of course, we also did repack rides there, right? Which I did a lot of on a single gear coaster brake bike where you literally take bacon. I did it. Bacon and tinfoil and wire it to your hub on your coaster brake. By the time you get to the bottom of that mountain, the bacon is cooked. I did it. So that was the kind of like the shakedown ride for this bike, getting it up there. And what was really cool was one of the guys there always kind of won. Like, it wasn't an official race, but he always got to the bottom of the mountain first. It was a long downhill ride. I don't know, maybe 15 minutes or so. Maybe that sounds like it's a lot to you guys, but it was a nice long downhill. It was pretty crazy. It's a dirt road, and it's the mountains out here. I mean, if you go off in some places, you could have a 100-foot drop and die. So you have to have your wits about you, know what you're doing. But that day, this bike beat out everybody. I got to the bottom of that mountain first on this thing. It held the road, the dirt road, like a rail. And it's lower, and because I'm back here, everything about the geometry on this was just perfect for downhill. It was amazing. And I never owned a bike with a front shock on it. I'm a rigid guy. I'm old school. So having a front, just even today on the ride here, with that front shock on there, it was amazing. So now, how often do you get a bike stolen and get it returned to you? Years later, in the same configuration. And the guy who bought it, he's, one of the bike dudes, and he bought it because he saw the pedals. There was something else he noticed. Oh, the wheels. He wanted the wheels and the pedals. He was going to strip this thing down. He bought it for $80, saw that it was spray bombed, threw it in his garage, and waited. And he told me a couple weeks later, he went out there, was going to get the tools out and start stripping the parts off. And he stood back and he looked at it and he goes, holy crap, this is art. Like, somebody took the time to braze this on and pull that cable here and pull this cable down here and use all the best parts at the time. And he never saw those bars before, and he knew what these brake levers were from. And he understood the saddle, and he saw the custom seat post and the specialized clamp. He saw that stuff and he said, I'm not touching this bike. It's a work of art. What did I tell you? That's the thing. It's like my furniture. You're never going to see my furniture in the garbage. There's not a Mike Z design piece of furniture that's ever going to be on the front curb someplace. You know what I'm saying? I'm an artist. Everything I do, I take to that level. I'm not bloviating here. I'm not trying to make myself sound like some special dude. I'm just being honest with you. I can't help myself. So that's it. I hope you guys dig this and you dug the pictures. Check out the picture folder if you ever wanted to build a clunker. If you wanted to build a real clunker mountain bike like this, that picture folder will show you what you're likely going to have to go through, and that's why clunking ain't easy. Have a good day. Be kind to one another. I'll catch you in the next one.